What if BBC's so-called toughest interviewer didn't challenge Nigel Farage, but practically apologised for questioning him? And what if, after that interview, she defended him more than she pressed him? You're not imagining it, that's exactly what happened. And it matters because when the media rolls over, Farage's contradictions and half-truths get a free pass. You know, a politician is being treated with kid gloves when the interviewer sounds more like an apologetic host than a journalist. Laura Kuenssberg all but sighed, "Sorry Nigel, I have to ask this," before lobbing him questions.
But you want to be Prime Minister and your own tax and business affairs aren't exactly straightforward. Your home and your...
I'm very sorry. I take objection to the very premise of that question.
Well, I'm going to just ask you about it because I know that you believe and you say you want to be transparent and open. So your constituency home where you stay in Clacton is owned by your partner, I believe. And you have a separate company for your earnings outside being an MP. I just wonder, right, I'm not suggesting anything...
Well, number one, they're two separate questions. The fact that she's bought a house, I mean, why not?
I'm not suggesting there's anything improper. My question is that you, like many other politicians, have affairs where there's a lot of money swilling around and that are not very like the financial arrangements of most people. Do you think that you can relate to people watching this interview?
I have been for 30 years, in my own way, an entrepreneur.
And then in the post-interview chat, she's happily defending him against her own panel. Maybe she's moved on from protecting the Tories to protecting reform.
Brian, while we were watching that, you said, he's just an incredible person.
Yeah, I don't mean incredible in a positive way. I think incredible in a negative way. I find him very venal, quite honestly, as an individual. He's selfish, and he's, on the whole, quite uninformed. I just dazzled at the way a lot of people have been seduced by him, because he's a bit of a bully. You can tell it the way he conducted that interview with you. I thought was a lot of it was kind of just badgering. I just don't trust the man. And also now, I know you've been part of that, but now what happened with Brexit, you know, there's never been a more positive time that we need to be a Europe. We've got to be Europe again because of what's happening in the Ukraine. And if we don't recognise that now, we're lost.
And yet, Michael Gove, listening to Brian, there'll be lots of people watching at home thinking, no, Nigel Farage is the one who understands my concerns. He's the one who speaks for me because, frankly, your two parties haven't done a good enough job for many years.
And that's the stage Farage wants. One where even the BBC seems nervous about holding him to account, which is crazy considering the man's answers. Take the issue on taxes. He slams ministers for dodging £40,000, but when asked about his own finances, suddenly transparency is an intrusion, which basically means I'll shine a torch into your wallet, but don't you dare peek into mine.
You said, though, yesterday you can't get away with being Housing Secretary and avoiding £40,000 of tax.
No.
Would you commit to publish your tax returns as you proceed on your journey that Hope will be getting to number 10?
All my company returns, of course, are filed every year at Companies House and there for all to see.
What about your own personal tax return?
I haven't published my own personal tax returns. I personally think that's an intrusion too far. I don't believe it's necessary.
So that's not something you would do on your journey to what you hope would take you to number 10?
At the moment, I'm not inclined at the moment to do that.
Then we get to his favourite topic, the boats. Farage says, I'll stop them in 2 weeks. Only now that's suddenly changed to mean 2 weeks after legislation passes, which Kuenssberg says could take months. No, it could take years. Of course, says Farage. Not 2 weeks then, unless you're working on Farage's standard time.
All small boats arriving within 2 weeks. How on earth would you do that?
As soon as the law is in place, as soon as you have the ability to detain and deport, you'll stop it in 2 weeks.
But to be clear about what you're promising the public, you're saying 2 weeks after you passed a law,
of course,
which might take many months.
Well, we want to do it as quickly as we possibly can.
But just to be clear with people watching this, your promise therefore would be not if you get into power that you would stop the boats within 2 weeks. It's that after you passed legislation, which might take a long time to go through Parliament, you think it would
number
take
one,
a
let's hope
fortnight
it
to
doesn't
happen.
take a long time, but within 2 weeks of passing legislation, we will stop this. Absolutely.
Aren't you risking doing what you criticise others for doing? It's making big, bold promises to the public that actually, when you look at the small print, don't quite stack up.
The difference is we mean it.
And when asked to condemn the racist chants at Reform protest, instead of saying, yes, that's vile, which would be the easiest way to answer it, Nigel mutters something about keeping perspective, as if calling for white Britain is just Concern's mum chatting at the school gates.
There has, though, also at some of these protests been evidence of some kind of language, some kind of activities that I think a lot of people watching might find distressing. At one protest in North London, it was heard people saying, "Get these scum off our streets." Outside a hotel at a protest in Falkirk in Scotland, there was evidence of people saying, "Keep Britain white." In Epping, at those protests outside the Bell, people were talking about pedo protectors. Now, as the leader of the most popular party in the country, according to the polls right now, I just wonder, do you want to condemn those remarks?
Very, very easy, isn't it, to take a few extremists, to quote what they say. And by the way, equally, we could talk about masked Antifa thugs turning up at these events too. But let's remember how these protests started. What was the Bell all about? The Bell was all about mothers and women in Epping from the local community, quite rightly, protesting that a 14-year-old girl had been sexually assaulted by one of these men who crossed by boat.
Even when he admits reform have no one in government experience, the big solution is Nadine Dorries. Yep, also known as Mad Nads, the former Culture, Media and Sport Secretary of State, who didn't know how Channel 4 was funded, spent the last 2 years of her parliamentary career just not attending Parliament, and took 6 months to resign with immediate effect.
I think the point about this government is they're not qualified for office. Where are the life experiences of this cabinet? Where's the business brain in this cabinet? Where's anybody in this cabinet that's ever run a company or been in private business? Nadine was a Brexiteer, of course, herself, and she brings us the one commodity we're very short of, and that's experience at government level. That is our biggest weakness. You know, you can ask me lots of questions about policy and personnel and all the rest of it. But if you ask me, you know, how are you going to do this? I can't really give you an answer because I haven't got anybody in the senior team that's ever been there before. Nadine came yesterday, she's the first, and there will be others.
So what did Laura Kuenssberg and her panel take away from all this? Not the hypocrisy, not the empty promises, not the extremists. No, the big revelation was that Nigel lacks a programme for government. Really, that's the nicest possible way to describe a man who just said he would deport people into a legal black hole.
I think revelation in the interview was the point that he almost volunteered at the end about the unpreparedness of reform for government. So I think, to be fair, actually, he relishes a row over asylum in Epping. He enjoys being able to use the North Korean analogy in order to bring something back to a free speech issue.
Surely not a politician saying something controversial to create a conversation and draw attention to it.
Imagine such a thing happening. So all of this is catnip to him. But the fundamental reform weakness is the lack of a detailed programme for government, let alone the people to implement it.
Nigel Farage, dodgy on taxes, slippery on promises, soft on racist, and being shielded by the BBC host who should know better. If this is Britain's alternative government, then maybe the boats aren't the only ones we should be worried about. And to see a rare glimpse in what Nigel Farage would do if he was made Prime Minister, because he's done exactly the same thing to Clacton right now, well, you need to watch the video that's on screen now. Thanks for watching, don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.